start with an acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianships of the land on which we all meet today. We pay our respects to their ancestors and the descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country, and we recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. So I'm just going to go through what we're going to cover today. So we're going to start off going through a little bit of background around metrics and research impact. Then I'm going to touch on traditional metrics, alternative metrics, go through live demonstrations of our Scopus and SciVal databases. And I know Nina said there are some external people, so people that are not at UQ that will potentially be attending today. So as I understand you all the institutions have access to Scopus and SciVal, so hopefully you'll be able to make use of the presentation that I do today. And then finally, I'll finish off with some advice and support at the end. Feel free to type any questions as we go along into chat, because Joy will be monitoring the chat as we go along, so she can answer any quick questions. And if there's anything like significant that I might need to talk to, we'll try and leave those to the end. But if there's anything pressing, Joy will interrupt me if she thinks it's relevant, so I can provide further context or explanation. So metrics and research impact. So I'm going to firstly talk about why measuring research impact is important. So why should you care? So there's things like career progression, obviously. So jobs, promotion, grant applications, public accountability. There's different people who care about impacts, so that whether that be universities, governments, industry, and the public. Ultimately, it's up to you to determine why it matters for yourself. So as I said, it plays a role with career progression. And universities obviously care because of rankings, and funders care because if you're demonstrating impact, it shows that value for money. So even if you're early in your career, I think it's important to start to think about how you can collect evidence to show that you are having impact in the real world. What I'm going to go through today is Scopus and SciVal is demonstrating some of the key metrics or evidence within the databases that you can use to start to collect, I guess, that impact, but it's not necessarily limited to the databases. It could be, for example, if you've spoken on radio or if you've appeared on a TV interview or talking about your research, that's all evidence that you can be collecting as you progress throughout your career. So it's really important to keep track of that so that you can refer back to it when required for grant applications, promotions, etc. So this is just a diagram that talks about that illustrates the research impact pathway. So inputs at the start, the left-hand side here, so what you need, the activity. So this is all within the academic research community. So what you do is the activity. So that might be so the research that you're carrying out. So whether it be experiments or clinical trials, etc. The outputs that or what you deliver and produce. So that could be the publications that you produce, for example. The outcomes, the awareness and use of your outputs. So this is in wider society, this part of the diagram, and then the impact. So that's the consequences of using your outputs. And yeah, that just shows, there's nice illustrations there as well. So why use citation metrics? So when I'm talking about citation metrics, citation metrics can actually be an indicator of knowledge impact. So there's different types of impact. So I'm sure you're familiar with the NHMRC definitions of or the different types of impact under the NHMRC. So knowledge impact is a big one that the NHMRC talks about. And if you're familiar with the NHMRC investigator scheme, which is open at the moment, knowledge impact is one I think that a lot of researchers use in the impact section of that grant because it's the easiest to demonstrate, right? So you can talk about the citations that your papers have accrued. So these are quantitative measures of research outputs. So you can look at things like citations of your journal articles and conference papers. And you can also use author identifiers. So things like your ORCID, your Scopus, author identifier to track these citations. And as I said, I'm going to demonstrate how to look at Scopus to track your metrics a little bit later on. So these metrics can be used as supporting evidence for impact claims about your track record, your contribution to the discipline and all the significance of your contribution, your international profile, and also your capacity to collaborate effectively. So if you're an early career researcher, with more published papers, you're more likely to have, you may not have huge number of papers published, but you can still look at your papers in terms of how they're performing individually, because obviously your track record may not be established as well as a mid to senior career researcher. But you can still look at the individual papers that you've got and unpack those to help tell your story. So these are some of the library guides. So these are open, they're not closed down to UQ people, or to UQ researchers, sorry. So anyone can access these. So there's one around metrics, engagement and impact, and also ORCID and the researcher identifiers. And these are the author identifiers that we always recommend researchers have up to date. And I know other libraries at other universities would be recommending these as well. So they're quite widely used across different institutions. So this is a list of some of the traditional metrics to consider. Obviously, you don't have to use all of these depending on the grant you're applying for, or whatever or if you're going for promotion, or even as part of your annual appraisal, you use what's most appropriate to you. But some of the metrics you can use in Scopus, which I will demonstrate, as I said. So your overall number of publications, your collaborators. So again, as an early career researcher, I think because you often don't have the volume of publications, talking about who you're collaborating with. Are you collaborating with industry? Do you have you had collaboration with international researchers or other institutions other than UQ or whatever your current institution is? The subject areas as well that you're publishing in, to show whether, if you're publishing in different in journals that are classified in different subject areas, that shows that your research that you're publishing in, you've got breadth of research across different areas. Who is citing you? So again, that's also something to look at. You can, in Scopus, you can export information around the citing countries, the subject areas. So they may be different subject areas to what you're immediately publishing in. So that again shows that breadth, and the different institutions as well. So there might be prestigious institutions or institutions that you might consider reaching out at later notice to collaborate with potentially. Journal rankings and subject areas. Then we also have the ability to look at benchmarking metrics, so how your performance compares to works in the field. So this is where we can really nut down how you're actually performing compared to others who are publishing in, or compared to other publications in similar subject areas of similar age and of the same document type. So we have this metric called the field-weighted citation impact, which the world average is 1. So if you're above 1, it means that your paper is performing above world average. And we can look at this also for a group of papers, so all of your papers that have been published. The collaboration rate, so we can look at different types of collaboration, so national, international, government, medical, your top papers. And we also have the impact module, which this is one thing that may not be accessible to the other universities, because it is an additional module which requires an additional subscription, which we, UQ, only purchased last year. But I have provided some alternatives if you don't have access to this impact module within the slides, so you won't be left out. And we also have the ability to look at highly cited and hot papers, which I won't demonstrate today, but just something to point out that it is worth checking Web of Science to see if you, at some point in your career, you might find that you do have a highly cited paper. These are quite prestigious. These are very prestigious. It's a prestigious indicator. It's not super common. So they're papers from the last 10 years within there's a specific subject schema that they use to classify these highly cited papers. And there's also hot papers, which are papers in the last 2 years, and they're in the top 0.1%. Highly cited papers are in the top 1%. So it's worth checking Web of Science, because if you know that you've got a paper that has been cited quite a bit, it's definitely worth checking Web of Science to see if you have a highly cited paper and taking a screenshot of that, because they will change over time. So it might be highly cited for like a few months, and then it might get removed. So it is worth keeping track of that regularly to just see, because you can keep track of that and then use it in applications as you go along. alternative metrics to consider. So this is talking about metrics that aren't necessarily using citation-based, so it's not based on citations. So these are things like online attention, which I'm not going to go into. Some of these other databases we're not going to cover today because we don't have time, but these are things that you can explore in your own time. So Altmetric, Explorer, I think most of the other institutions had a subscription to this one, but that database also tracks policy mentions. They also track news mentions, clinical guidelines, social media mentions, so like X posts. So you can see how much your research is being talked about online. PlumX, so this is a tool through Scopus, which I will demonstrate when I do the demonstration. And Sage Policy Profiles is also a tool that you can use to track impact. So this is more the alternative for those that don't have the SciVal impact module. They can't access that. The conversation, so you can look at readership within, if you've published, if you know that you've written for the conversation, that's something that you can also use to track how much the public or the research community is interacting with your work. Books and chapters, so if you've published a book or a book chapter, you can also demonstrate the influence of these through looking at a tool called WorldCat, which is freely accessible, so everyone should be able to just access via there's a website there. So if you go to that page, it provides you a link to WorldCat, and you can look at how many countries worldwide hold that particular book or book chapter. And you can also look at digital downloads of ebooks as well. So this is just going, I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but Sustainable Development Goals. So this demonstrates that your research supports the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We can look at this in SciVal and Scopus as well. So if your paper is classified in a particular SDG, it will show up in Scopus or SciVal or SciVal. Non-traditional research outputs. So there's a link to our library page here. If you've got non-traditional research outputs, there's also instructions in this guide around how you can demonstrate the impact of those non-traditional research outputs, such as research reports, curated exhibitions or events, and data sets. Obviously, you can't rely on citations so much for this. Like research reports, I know, can be cited. You can track citations through something like Google Scholar, for example, but you can't rely on that evidence within the databases as much. So it's really important to track any evidence that you have that you've had engagement, whether that be with the general public in terms of, like, for example, a curated event or exhibition. If you've got reviews that have come in online, that's something that you can use for that particular output type. A Google Scholar, so we say only use Google Scholar if you're not well represented in Scopus or Web of Science. And I know traditionally in the health medical field, researchers are generally pretty well represented. So for this particular group, I would be saying, yeah, avoid using Google Scholar. I know as an early career researcher, it might be tempting. So you could, we recommend using Scopus obviously or Web of Science as the primary source. And then if you feel like the Google Scholar adds weight to what you're trying to say, you can use it, but it doesn't offer benchmarking like SciVal and Insights does either. So traditional metrics. So I am going to now demonstrate how to find your track record metrics in Scopus. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a second, sorry, just while and reshare. Okay, oops, that's wrong. Sorry, I will just go. Okay, can you all see that now? Yep, okay. So I'm going to use Tianzi Sun as a demonstration, because I was told, Nina had said that Tianzi had given permission to use their profile in this presentation. Just a sec. So I'm just going to show how you get to Scopus from our library website first. So the easiest way is to type Scopus directly into our library search from our website. So you can just type it in, click enter, and then it should come up. It's like the first result that should come up. So then you just click here. Okay. And then we're going to do an author search. And you don't have to be logged in. I am automatically logged in here, but you don't have to be logged in to do a search. But if you want to save anything, you do need to be logged in. So we found you there. So this brings up her profile. And then we're going to do view in search results format. Okay, and so this shows how many documents. So there's 55 documents found. So there's a number of filters down the left-hand side here. So we can see we can filter to a specific year range if we wanted to. I'm just going to leave it as all career for now. It also gives you the ability to filter by subject area, document type. So we usually recommend removing, if you had any like errata, for example, or retractions, removing those from the analysis. There's also affiliation, country, so affiliations there and country as well. So if I wanted to, I'll quickly show, so if you wanted to analyze the publication, so to look at like the collaborators, the subject areas that you're publishing in, the easiest way to do that is to scroll down and click on this button, Export Filter Counts. And then that will actually give you a CSV, download a CSV file, which gives you that publication information. I'll just wait. I just got to drag it onto screen. Okay, so if you can see that, so we've got here a number of different categories or analyses that have been exported. So there's a list of all the authors that are listed on these publications, the subject areas, so you can see medicine and social sciences are the top two there. Medicine is the bulk of them, so 54. The document types, the journals that are featured, the affiliations, so UQ's at the top, not surprisingly, and then you can also see the other institutions that Tianzi's collaborated with. So there's a few international ones here, King's College London, and then there's also the countries as well. So there's 9 other countries other than Australia that feature on the publications. So this is the type of information. You can use this data to then formulate statements about your collaboration or the subject areas that you're publishing in. I'm just going to stop sharing that. Oops. Sorry, I meant to screen 2. Okay, back to here. So if you want to look at the citing information, so information on the publications that are citing these 55 documents, we go to more and then view cited by, and then make sure you go to, well, there's 55, that's fine. Just make sure that it's captured. You want to make sure that it's capturing all the documents. So there's 55 that it's capturing here. And it's saying that there's 909 documents found. So there's 909 publications that have cited this 55 documents. So again, if you want to look at the citing information, we can again use that Export Filters Count button. And then open. Okay, so now it looks very similar. So it's the same categories or analyses that have been performed, except this is for the citing publications. So again, you can look at the authors. So you might see some authors there that are particularly, that are key, or like they're leaders in their field. So if you're being cited by someone that is particularly, if they're a leader in the particular area, then that might be worth highlighting. Also subject areas. So you can see there's a lot longer list of subject areas here compared to the ones that Tianzi had published in. So you can use that. So you can say there's like, how many is there? 25 25 subject areas that are citing their work, and there's subject areas that beyond their immediate disciplines of medicine and social science. So you could mention some of these other ones, such as arts and humanities, nursing, etc. So you tailor it to what you like, the story you want to tell, obviously. So you know your research best, so you know, and the grant or the whatever you're applying for at the time, whatever story you're trying to tell, you use the data that's going to put you, I guess, in the best light. And you can also see the affiliations here, these different institutions. So again, there's a long list here. There is one limitation with Scopus in that it doesn't export more than 160 of any particular category. So I think there's 160 here. So, and you can see this particular institution, there was 4 publications. So there's obviously some more. So it'd be more than, we say like more than 160. So it's just one limitation to be aware of in Scopus, is that it only exports the first 160. In Web of Science, it doesn't have that limitation, so you can export however many there are. But we just like to point that out because some researchers do have a lot of citing institutions or countries, etc. The countries are also here. So again, there's a lot, this list is a lot longer than the collaborating list. So you can point out how many countries are citing your work and highlight the ones that you may not have collaborated with as well. So I'm just going to minimize that. So I'm just going to check the other thing that I wanted to point out. Sorry, I'm just going to refer back to my notes. Oh yeah, okay. So I'm also going to just go back. So in addition, we can also look at metrics such as the H index. I'm just going to go. So in this graph here, it shows publishing activity over time. So that's date range 2001 to 2026. So this is the citation. This is an overview of the number of citations that the publications have received each year. And then up the top here, we've got, where is it going? Actually, sorry, I'm just going to go back. There shouldn't be 44. That's right. I don't know why it's showing 50. Oh, it's because I've set all documents on page. Let me try that and see if it works. Interesting. Okay.
Use the orange slider where it
the
says
orange.
Yep.
This one. Okay. Thanks, Joy. I hadn't realized that quite. So there's 55 documents. That's correct. So there's 1,052 citations to those documents. So that's another track record metric that you could cite, as well as the H index is 17. So that means that you've got 17 publications that have been cited at least 17 times. So that's, and you can also export this citing information as well. So if you click the export button, it'll export it, and it gives you a detailed overview of each publication and the number of citations that have occurred each year as well. So probably not so relevant to early career researchers, but as you progress in your career, it is useful to track like how many publications have like continued to be cited each year, because that shows longevity. Okay, I'm going to go back. So what I'm going to demonstrate now is how you look at individual metrics for a particular paper. So I'm just going to click on one here. So actually that's probably, I'm going to pick it slightly different. I'm going to pick a, not a really new paper. How about one here? So up the top here for this particular paper, it also gives you an overview of the metrics. So the number of citations, 18, and also the field weighted citation impact. So as I mentioned earlier, anything above 1 means that the paper is performing above world average. So this particular paper is performing 2 times above world average. It does also give you a bit more information. So if you click on impact here, so under Scopus metrics, it tells you that the paper's in the 86th percentile. So that means it's in the top 14%. And you can also get this information in SciVal as well. So I'll show you. So this particular paper wouldn't be in the top 10% then, like, because as I mentioned, there was a slide that pointed out how you can work out your top 1%, 5% and 10% papers in SciVal, but it's still performing above world average. So if you were, like, if there was a particular reason to highlight this paper, it would be worth highlighting because it is performing above world average. And then underneath here, we also have the PlumX metrics. So this PlumX captures, it's similar to Altmetric in that it captures news mentions, policy as well. So the policy citations that you see here, they will also be reflected in SciVal. So in the SciVal impact module that I mentioned, we have access to now. But if you don't have access to SciVal impact, you can actually look at the policy citations at an individual paper level within PlumX. So if you click on the paper and go to impact and then scroll down here, you'll see. So this one, we click view PlumX details. It'll give you a bit more information around the PlumX metrics details. So the policy mentions, it shows here the 2 policy mentions, one of them Parliament of Australia document, and then this one is the state of Indiana. So if you wanted to actually look at how the publication had been cited in context, you could click the read more button and it would take you to that particular policy document. The news mentioned, so yeah, again, you could also click that to find out more information about how that was mentioned, and a Wikipedia reference as well. So that's the PlumX. So this particular paper, sorry, doesn't have an SDG, a Sustainable Development Goal attached to it. So as I mentioned, not all publications will be assigned an SDG. There's like a unique methodology. So each database has a different methodology to make it even more confusing. But Scopus or Elsevier, the vendor that looks after Scopus and SciVal, have a unique methodology that they use, which they have adjusted since it came into play a few years ago. They have made changes to it. So I think in the slides, there was an example of a publication. I might bring the slides back up. Hang on. I think I've shown everything that I wanted to in Scopus. Okay. So this I've put in screenshots showing all the analyses that I've just demonstrated before. So you should be able to go back and refer to those screenshots if you wish. And you can also refer back to the recording as well. So yeah, this is showing an individual paper, the PlumX metrics, so the Sustainable Development Goals. So there is a link there to what they are if you haven't heard of the Sustainable Development Goals. Oops. And then this particular paper here in this screenshot did have an SDG assigned. So it was goal number 3, good health and well-being. So that just illustrates how that you can actually look at the assignment of what SDGs are assigned to a publication if it does have an assignment. But as I mentioned, not all publications will have that assignment. And if you look at other databases such as Web of Science or Dimensions, they might have a different assignment. So this particular publication may not have that same assignment of SDG 3 in Dimensions, for example, because they all have slightly different methodologies on how they do the classification. But it is, I guess, like the reason why you might highlight the SDGs is that it shows that you're having impact in a particular SDG area. So you could say, I have X number of publications in a particular area, which I'll show how you can get those numbers in SciVal, because you can actually look at combining. You can look at how many you've got in SDG 3, for example. So providing context to track record evidence. We do have an example statement PDF document, a bank of statements within UQ eSpace. So this is a document that is locked down to UQ researchers, but there are some examples that I have put on this slide just to show what the type of statements that's included in that metrics bank. So there's one here around number of citations, so 11 referee journal articles number of publications that are indexed, so 7 are indexed in Scopus with 34 citations total. And then we always make sure that we're citing the source that the data came from, so Scopus, and the date that was accessed, because obviously if you don't know the date, then the reviewer or whoever's looking at the statement or the summary that you've put together won't know when that was taken, and it can change. It does change regularly over time. You can also talk about if you're receiving more citations over time as you're progressing through your career. So in the last 5 years, citations to my papers have more than tripled from 10 citations in 2018 to 35 in 2025. Again, citing the source and the date. Collaborations as an example statement there. International collaborations, so highlighting if you've received citations from particular institutions that might be noteworthy to highlight within your field. And then also you can talk about translational research. So my research has been cited by several authors affiliated with clinical entities, so mentioning what they are, which may reflect engagement and possible translation of research into practice. And yeah, so just pointing out that citations from researchers in health industry, First Nations corporations, government organisations can highlight engagement with your research beyond academia. So now we're going to move on to SciVal. So as I mentioned, so SciVal is where you can do more complex analyses of your metrics. So you can get more information about how your publications are performing as a group of papers. So you can look at publications for your whole career or a particular time period, because certain grants do require you to look at different time periods. So the investigator, I know, focuses on the last 10 years. So I'll demonstrate now. We'll go into SciVal. Okay. So can you see, so I'm going to type in SciVal to the library search page just to show you again how to find that particular database. And then we go.
Can't see your screen.
Oh, you can't see it. Sorry, Joy. Oh, sorry, everyone. I thought I had clicked share. Can you see it? Can you see that now?
Yes.
Cool. Thanks, Joy. Okay, so I am going to type in SciVal to the library search page. I'll just go back and show that. Okay, and then search. And then it comes up as the first option. I'm just going to click that. So for SciVal, you do need to have a login to be able to access. If you click that button through I've already got a login, but it's very simple to set up. It takes you through some prompts and you just set it up with your institutional email address, create a password, and then you should be in. We're going to, so I actually haven't set this up myself, but there is an easy way to put your profile into SciVal. There's instructions on the slides as well, but the easiest way is to type your name in here. And then, so I'm just going to use TNC. And then, so I've typed the name in, and then this first option matches. So that's the one I want to look at. So I'm not going to connect it to myself because it's not me, but I just, for example, if it was you would tick that box and then save and finish. And then I'm going to go to the Explore module. So you can see I've got Tianzi's profile selected here. And then, so we've got some summary metrics here. So again, it's showing 55 publications. So the same number that were in Scopus. Sometimes there is a bit of a lag because Scopus is slightly ahead of Cyber. So you may find that your number of publications is slightly higher in Scopus than Cyber. I think, so you can also change the year range. So I think Tianzi only started publishing in like 2020, I think, from memory, but you can change it according to whatever time frame you want to look at. We've got the field weighted citation impact here. So this is based on the average for that set of papers. So it's 2.53. So above world average 2.5 times. So would be worth highlighting because it's well above that average. So you could cite this in a grant application, for example. The total citation count, I think that was from memory this is slightly lower than what we saw in Scopus, which is not surprising because as I mentioned, Scopus is ahead of Cyber. The number of sites per publication, so on average, how many sites per publication, 18.9. The H index again. There's also a nice donut chart here showing the subject areas represented. We go to publication metrics. So this page provides a bit more information about the trajectory over time. So we can see the first publication was in 2020 and how productive they've been each year. We've also got outputs in top citation percentiles. So this is where you can look at publications that you've got in the top 10% and 1% as well. And this is shown as field weighted. So it only compares papers that are classified in the same subject area, the same of the same type. So articles are compared to articles and of the same age. So papers from 2021, for example, are compared to other papers in 2021. So you can see here there is 17 publications, so 30%, 31% are in the top 10% most cited publications worldwide, field weighted. So that is, again, another metric that could be highlighted. Then this graph here shows publications in top journal percentiles. This one is based on top 10%. You can also look at top quartiles, which is probably more useful because top 10% is like not including all, that's like half of the top quartile. So I might just I'll jump to journal quartiles to show you what I mean. So this is Q1, so that's the top 25% of journals. So you can see here there's 52, so 94.5% of the publications are in that top quartile, which often is worth highlighting. Obviously, you should always look at the grant guidelines to see what's more significant to highlight. For the investigator, for example, I know they like to focus more on the impact. So talking about quartile is probably not as relevant as some of the other things that you could mention. But it also shows the breakdown of Q2, Q3, Q4 as well. I've also got screenshots of some of these in the slides as well. Collaboration. So this is showing the different collaboration types. So the percentage of the publications that are international, national only, institutional collaboration or single authorship. So you can see international is 23.6%. And it also gives you some metrics here as well. So the field weighted citation impact is quite a lot higher for the international collaboration, which is not surprising generally. Papers that have international collaboration attract more citations and perform better than those with institutional or national collaboration only. And then academic corporate. So Tianzi doesn't have any any pubs of academic corporate collaboration. But if you did, that would show up there and you would be able to click on the hyperlink to go and get more information about those particular papers as well. You could download them to an Excel spreadsheet. We also have the ability to look at, so that's sector collaboration. No, that's not what I'm, sorry. There should be, no, okay, sorry, I was, let's go back to the citation metrics and citation metrics. publication metrics, sorry. So if you want to download a list of your publications and look at the metrics, individual metrics for each paper, the easiest way to do that is to click on this view list of publications, and then it gives you the different fields on the left-hand side again. So the authors, the institutions. So you can apply filters if you wish. So for example, as I mentioned earlier, if you had errata or retractions, you could exclude those from the analysis. Or if you wanted to just analyze articles and reviews, for example, you could just limit to those two document types and then limit to. So I'm going to just analyze all of these. So if I click export and then export spreadsheet, it then brings you up a separate screen which prompts you to indicate which fields you want to include in the export. So the ones that we recommend including are the citations in particular. So you can include however many you want, but citations, field-weighted citation impact, and the field-weighted outputs in top citation percentiles per percentile, because that'll give you the percentile that the paper is classified in, so how it's performing. Policy citations might also be of interest because that you'll be able to see which papers are cited in policy, but you can also explore that through another tab on the side, the left-hand side, which I'll show you after I've showed you this. You can also include things like the title, authors. I'm just going to leave the default how it is there, and sustainable development goals too. So if a publication is classified in a particular SDG, that'll also show up in the spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm going to go export to CSV. Okay, so I'm going to make this. All right. I'm just going to do some formatting. So here we can see the field-weighted citation impact column. So that gives you the field-weighted citation impact for each paper. I'm just going to do a sort on the percentage, which is the next column over here, the percentile, sorry. So I'm going to go smallest to largest because the smallest indicates that, so 1 indicates it's in the top 1%. So if we see here, we can see there's 17 papers, as it said on the screen earlier. So there's 17 papers in the top 10%. We can also see there's 3 papers in the top 1%. So this is how you work out which papers you might want to highlight. So it's worth highlighting those papers that are performing, that are in the top 10% or 1% or 5%. It also, so I've exported the number of authors as well. So I know some researchers in health and medicine can have like hyper-authored papers where there's more than 100 authors. And you may not have had you may not have had much of a contribution to those, so you may not want to highlight those in your application, for example. I mean, it depends, like some people have quite a bit, they do have a contribution, so it's really up to the researcher to make that decision, but it is useful to have that to just, to know, well, to know whether you want to exclude it or not. What else? Oh, the SDG here, so you can see there's a few here that are being classified in SDGs. You can also filter to the ones that have got something. And you can also get a count of how many are in each SDG as well. So you could count, so all of these here are in SDG 3, so there's 11 there. And it's also got the subject classification under the all science journal classification field, so the different subject areas that it's classified in. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. Oops. All right, so I'm conscious that we're running out of time, so I'm just going to go back to the slides quickly. So I've been through that. So these are just some more example statements. I won't read through all these now, but again, some more example statements of the field-weighted citation impact, collaboration, citations per paper, top papers that you could use or tinker with to make it more specific to yourself. The policy impact. So I think we've run out of time to go through the policy impact just because I'm conscious we're running it. But there is instructions here on how to navigate the policy impact module within SciVal if you do have access. As I said, some of the other institutions may not have access to this, but you can look at how many documents, how many citing policy documents you have, the number of countries that your publications have been cited by. And there's also a screenshot here of the fields, because you can export them to Excel and again select the relevant fields. So there's a screenshot here showing the relevant fields to export. So Sage Policy Profiles is another tool that you can use to track policy information. And this guide here, which is accessible not like to people outside of UQ as well, has a link to that particular tool. So you can basically do a search for yourself as a researcher, and it looks at policies that are citing your work, as well as policies that cite the policy. So you can dive into a bit more, you can go deeper into that information as well. Yeah, so it's useful if your institution doesn't have a subscription to SciVal Impact. You can download a spreadsheet as well through that tool. And the patent impact, I don't think patents are as relevant to this group. Nina, I think you'd said that, yeah. But that is also something that you can access through the impact module. So there are instructions there as well. So I've just got some tips around capturing metrics and impact. So keeping a record of the evidence is really important. Downloading the data, taking screenshots of the evidence and noting the source and the date. Context is important, so make metrics meaningful by providing context. Focus on the reach and significance and on your contribution to the research that created that impact. And knowing your audience is really important too. So because you want to communicate why your research matters to them. And then finally, for advice, ask for advice. So seek advice from your supervisor or senior colleagues in your area. Talk to your local research administration team. Also looking at, if you're applying for a grant, I think looking at past successful grant applications is really useful. That's something that my team regularly look at to see what types of metrics people are using that are successful. And then meeting with a librarian to explore metrics and impact options. I've only put the UQ email there, but I'm sure those at other institutions will have a relevant library contact that they can reach out to for support. And thank you very much for listening. Yeah, hopefully that is, been covered some of your, hopefully it's covered what you wanted to cover, Nina.
Yeah, absolutely. That was excellent. Thank you so much, Rebecca and Joy as well. I'd just like to point out to the NICER folks as well that we have Shell at the library as well, who is the NICER outreach librarian, if you weren't aware. So we do have lots of support from the library. Are there any questions from anyone at the moment? See in the chat. Oh, yeah, excellent presentation.
I've got a question, Beck. Someone's asking about the FWCI being unstable, especially for newer publications.
Yeah, yes, thanks, Joy. Yeah, that's a good question. It is definitely unstable because, so if you look at 2026 papers, some papers might have already received a few citations and then others wouldn't have had the time to accrue citations at all. So we do advise for the most recent year, so we're in 2026 now, for 2026 papers, we advise using caution when interpreting the field-weighted citation impact for those more recent papers. We sometimes we're middle of the year now, but we're still seeing it's quite unstable for those 2026 papers. So we advise when looking at a group of papers. So if you're looking at your whole career, for example, to exclude those most recent year papers from the analyses to get your overall field-weighted citation impact. So it's not as skewed based on those recent papers. Obviously, it depends on the size of your publication set, because if you've only got a small number, it's going to be skewed more by those recent papers. But that is our advice generally. Yes, Brian.
Friday, yeah.
Brian.
Thanks, Rebecca. That was really, really great talk. One thing you mentioned was benchmarking, and it occurred to me that some of our PhD students or early career researchers might not know what you meant by benchmarking. Can you explain what you mean exactly?
Yeah, sorry. So benchmarking meaning, so it's comparing papers to papers of similar subject area, age, and type, so the document type. So that, benchmarking can have a few different meanings, to be honest. So that can be one way to think about benchmarking is that you're comparing your papers compared to similar papers of the same age and in the same subject area of the same type. But you can also look at so how your papers, you might look at how your papers are performing in a particular, your papers classified in a particular subject area. So for example, I didn't get to show this, but you could look at medicine. So the subject area of medicine, for example, you could just, if you've got papers classified in that subject area, you can just drill down to that. It's not as relevant, I guess, to early career researchers because you just don't have usually that volume to be able to do that, for that comparison to be meaningful. Because we say you need ideally at least 20 papers to do that benchmarking analysis. So 20 papers in the field subject of medicine, and you could look at then your field weighted citation impact, because it might be higher than your overall field weighted citation impact, say for all of your publications, if you're performing particularly well in a particular subject area. So it's more relevant, I think, when you're further on in your career to do that more granular analyses in particular subject areas. But yeah, that's broadly speaking what we mean by benchmarking. I mean, you can also benchmark against like Australia, for example, GO8. Like we advise researchers not to benchmark themselves. Like you can look at how you're going against individual researchers, but generally we recommend not to include that in grants. Although I know sometimes, like for really competitive grants, for example, like the laureate scheme, sometimes they just want to show that they're really outperforming their peers. So I have seen examples of researchers doing that for that scheme, for example. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, Gab, I think you were next.
Yeah. Hi, Rebecca. Thanks heaps for that. Really useful. Just a question about, it gets tricky about systematic reviews. Obviously, they get really highly cited, but some of the feedback has been from NHMRC investigator grants is that the reviewers haven't liked it, particularly if it was just like, because they get really high impact and everything, but a lot of the reviews coming back at the moment, or in the most recent years, are saying too many systematic reviews and everything. So do you have any advice about having a balance of like reviews and then actual primary research as well?
Are you talking in terms of like listing top 10 publications?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be probably more a question for the research office. I don't know. It's tricky. It's interesting to hear that that's the feedback that has been received, though, because we don't always, like my team don't always get to see that type of the feedback that comes from reviewers. Okay. We've seen sporadic things over time, but I don't have any exact advice on that. Joy, what do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I would tend to go with and ask the research office.
Okay. Yeah, because I think a lot when you look at them, they're highly cited and everything, but a lot of people who had systematic reviews as they're in their top 10, there's been comments, there's been too many. And I mean, systematic reviews are supposed to sort of be done before you then move on to your own research. So if it tells a story, it's nice and neat. But if there's just a lot of systematic reviews, it's been really looked poorly on by the reviewers.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I just thought I'd bring it up. Yeah, that.
Yeah, no, sorry, we can't comment further. Yeah, I think it would be worth touching base with the research office on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Gav. And I think just a final quick question from Tianzi as well.
Rebecca, I just had a question about whether the platforms like PlumX and Altmetrics will include LinkedIn metrics into their metrics as well. Because right now I think they exclude that, even though I've noticed like most researchers have shifted away from X and those kind of platforms.
Yeah, so LinkedIn, Joy, correct me if I'm wrong, LinkedIn is included in Altmetric, isn't it? I'm pretty sure. Or
no, it was.
Oh, it was. That's right.
And it still looks like it is.
Yes.
But they don't get that data anymore.
Yes. No. Okay. Thanks, Joy. Glad that I've got Joy here. Yes, and what was the other one that you mentioned, Tianzi? Was it LinkedIn and
PlumX.
PlumX?
Yeah.
So, so PlumX doesn't have LinkedIn either. Is that what you were asking about, whether it was included in PlumX? Is that right?
Or just whether they will include
Whether they
LinkedIn.
will?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about PlumX. Joy, I don't think we've heard anything to suggest that. But
No, I think LinkedIn is just keeping all its data to itself and doesn't want to share with these other
yeah,
providers.
unfortunately,
Right.
yes. Yeah,
So
sorry.
does that mean that we should still keep using X and whatever the other ones are? Oh, Blue Sky as well.
Yeah, I know this. I have noticed, like, over the last few years, that researchers are tending to post more on LinkedIn than X and what was the other platform you just mentioned? Blue
Blue
Sky.
Sky.
I haven't looked at
Yeah.
Blue Sky much myself. I think Joy's looked at it a bit, but yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. We can definitely raise it with we can ask Elsevier about for PlumX, and Digital Science is the vendor for we may have asked before. Joy, have we asked that question before? I don't know if we have.
I'm not sure.
We can ask. We can get back. We can let you know what they say anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, because it is true that researchers use it more now for posting things to do with their research, isn't it? Is that generally?
Yeah.
And is there a reason for that? Or is it?
Maybe like ever since Elon Musk took over the Twitter and
Yeah.
yeah, I think.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. We have run out of time, but thank you again, Rebecca and Joy, for coming along and
No
providing
worries.
this super informative presentation. I'm sure all of us are going to be looking back at these slides and the recording many a time.